My name is Dan Jescu. I'm a CINP Vice President. I'm working at the Medical University of Vienna, where I'm also heading general psychiatry. And it's a pleasure to introduce the winner of the Max Hamilton Memorial Prize, which is a very prestigious prize by CINP, and the winner for 2022 is going to present himself.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Jescu. My name's Rob McCutcheon. I'm an academic psychiatrist at the University of Oxford. I'd really like to thank the CINP for awarding me this award. It's a really great honor. I'd also like to thank Professor Alan Young for nominating me. Thank you.
Okay. Could you introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of my background, my original undergraduate studies were in chemistry. And during that period, I undertook some work with people with schizophrenia just at a local drop-in center. And it was really at that point that I became very interested in psychosis and the people that suffer from psychotic illnesses. And I applied to medical school with a view to undertaking psychiatric training from that, and basically carried on trying to obtain as much research experience in psychiatry as possible throughout medical school. I then came to Oxford as part of the academic foundation program, where I combined my initial postdoctoral medical training with some psychopharmacology research before moving to the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience and the Maudsley Training Scheme in London, where I remained for about 10 years, undertook a PhD in neuroimaging and psychopharmacology prior to moving to my current position now. And throughout that, my research focus has really been on better understanding the pathophysiology of psychotic disorders and how to better develop treatments.
So what would you consider as the most important part of your research?
So most of my work kind of falls into two camps, really. Slightly more sometimes esoteric, neuroscience type research, variety of kind of novel neuroimaging techniques, new ways of analyzing data, which are kind of very interesting and maybe have great potential for future advances. But actually, I think the more impactful work that I've undertaken is that with direct clinical application, whether that's been developing guidelines on how we actually assess treatment-resistant schizophrenia, or work looking at kind of how antipsychotic plasma levels might be able to be better used in clinical practice. It's that type of work that I think is, in a way, the most important.
Okay, so in some of your more recent papers, you were trying to look at the glutamatergic system, also in relation to the dopaminergic system, and have some quite interesting findings. Could you just summarize some of this in one or two sentences?
Yeah, so some of this has been using combined PET and MRI to look at how these systems may relate to each other. And what we've found and kind of studied both in people with schizophrenia and people with healthy controls is that connection between the dopamine and glutamate system seems to differ between these groups, with, in some ways, a stronger connection being seen at times in people with schizophrenia that's not always present in healthy controls. And that this also seems to relate to the patterns of gray matter loss that we see in schizophrenia.
So in which direction do you see the field moving?
I think, one direction across both clinical research and neuroimaging research is a move to larger scale, more collaborative projects, where people are kind of combining their data, as it's kind of become apparent that lots of what we see in neuropsychiatric research is relatively small effect sizes. Seems that the way that we're going to be able to get more replicable results that we're able to build upon is via this collaborative type approach.
So do you have any specific topics in mind for future research?
So my research, that I'm currently undertaking, going to be undertaking for, several years, is really trying to better understand what underlies the cognitive and negative symptoms in schizophrenia. In some ways it feels like we have a bit of a handle on what may underlie the positive symptoms, and likewise a bit of a handle on how we can treat these pharmacologically. But we're still at a bit of a loss when it comes to cognitive and negative symptoms, and these are the symptoms that really underlie a lot of the burden associated with the disorder. So I think it's a really exciting area, particularly as new treatments with new mechanisms of action arrive on the scene.
Is there specific advice that you would want to give to early careers?
I think one thing is to make sure you're doing something that you're interested in, because research is quite hard. Whatever you're doing, I don't think doing boring research is any easier than doing interesting research. It's probably harder, in fact. So make sure that you're doing something that you actually enjoy, because otherwise there's not much point really in putting in all that work. And along those lines, find people that you actually like working with, and that you enjoy, that help make the research enjoyable for yourself.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for listening.